from had a guest at my house from uh, Bridgeport, Connecticut. And he was telling me, you've got this politician who's unbelievable. He was saying he was eating an apple and fielding
Yeah,
those
yeah, it was
questions like a
famous. It was
pro.
famous. It went viral.
Yeah, he's gewaltig. Okay, so yesterday we were learning about Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina. He made a comment, and there's a question of what his comment was referring to. Was it referring to the first part of the brisa, the second part of the brisa, or a completely different brisa? And we went through his option if he was referring to the first part of a brisa. So let's get refreshed into what the brisa said. The brisa said, Tanu Rabbanon, which is towards the top of Lamed Beis Amud Beis. The brisa says, "Hanichnas lechanusay shel nagar shaloi b'rishus." Someone walks into a carpentry shop without permission. And a piece of wood flew up, or a metal piece flew up, hit him in the head, umes, and he died, potter, the man's potter. But if he went in with permission of the carpenter, chayiv, it's chayiv. And here is where Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina said his comment. My chayiv, what does chayiv mean? Zok to Gemara. So my chayiv means, what does it mean? The seifa of the brisa. Im nichnes b'rshus chayiv. If this visitor had permission to come into the carpentry shop, and a piece of wood or a piece of bikas hit him, he's chayiv. What does chayiv mean? Amar Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina, chayiv v'dal dvarim v'potem migolos. You're not chayiv in a case where the person Rachmana litzlan died. There he would not be chayiv golos, but he would be chayiv daled dvarim if the person was injured, was hurt. And the Gemara said the reason for this is because if you gave someone permission to come into your shop, it's incumbent upon you to be careful that he doesn't get injured. If he does, we don't consider that a shogeg. That's a little bit more negligent than just an innocent shogeg. We call that shogeg karev lemezid, and therefore you're not going to be chayiv in golus because golus isn't severe enough of a punishment for you. So therefore there won't be golus. You're not chayiv enough that you should be chayiv misa because there was no edom on Nasra and it wasn't b'mezid, but it's not so lenient like a shogeg that golus would be enough for you, and therefore there's no din golus. The Gemara then asked several kashas on Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina. How could you tell me that a shogeg karev lemezid does not go into golus? We had different cases that seemingly were shogeg karev lemezid, and the brisa told us in those cases that the ritzach does go into golus, such as a shliach bezdin giving somebody malchus who miscounted, gave extra malchus, and that caused the victim to die. The Gemara tells us that's a regular shogeg. It's not a shogeg karev lemezid because he didn't just arbitrarily decide to give somebody an extra lash. Rather, the dayan that was counted wrong, and he just went along. He went with the flow, and I guess he should have double checked their cheshbon. Oh, thank you so much, Mati. That was the first kasha. The second kasha was from someone who throws a rock into Rosh Hashanah. That's also shogeg karev lemezid, and there again, the brisa says you're going to golus. For that, the Gemara answers that throwing a rock into Rosh Hashanah wasn't quite like that. What he was doing was he was breaking down a wall, and he happened to have been neighboring an ashpa. An ashpa is a place where no one goes there by day usually to use the bathroom. It was an ashpa that people actually went to the bathroom in. People at night are going to go there. So what happened was he was breaking his wall by day. He was not expecting anyone to be there by day. They should have been, because normally people only come at night. And it turns out that somebody had to come, and that person got hurt. So again, it's shogeg, it's not shogeg karev lemezid. So that's how we protected Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina's memra if he was talking about the second half of the brisa, meaning I gave somebody permission, the carpenter gave somebody permission to come into his warehouse. The fellow comes in and he gets hurt. That's called shogeg karev lemezid. It's potter from golus because this is too big of a negligence to be considered a shogeg. If the victim was only injured, then the carpenter would pay dalet dvarim, nezek tsar ripui and shevis, not boishes, because he didn't intend to throw anything at this person. And I believe we're up to now, Rav Papa Mishmei Rava Masni la Resha. He said there, Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina's comments when he said that your potter from Golos and Chayiv Dal Dvarim was not referring to the Seifa, where there was Nichnas Pershus. Maybe they would go into Golos. He was referring to the Resha where the person was Nichnas Shaloi Pershus. And what does it say? Hanichnas Lechanusha Shal Nagar Shaloi Pershus, V'nitzabikis V'tab Chapon of a mace, Potter, on that, the Rebbe said it's Potter Migolos, but Chayiv in Dal Dvarim. So let's have a look here inside. And on Potter, Amar Beis Bechania, Chayiv B'Dal Dvarim. Even though the Brisa says you're Potter from Golos, if the person was injured and not killed, the owner of the carpenter would have to pay Dal Dvarim. Upotter Migolos, but it's Potter from Golos. The Gemara fears always, Man the Matin La Seifa. If you hold in the Seifa that you're Potter from Golos, calls you can Aresha, you're Potter from Golos. But if you hold in the Resha, there you're Potter from Golos and Chayiv Dal Dvarim. Aval Seifa Kivin the Bershus Chayiv Golos. Maybe Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina would hold in the Seifa that you would be Chayiv Golos, and even though it's Karban Amazed, you would still be Chayiv Golos. So depending on where Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina said his comments, it would dictate whether or not Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina holds someone goes into Golos in the case of Shogeg Karban Amazed. Frag to Gemara, how could you say that? Mi Chayiv Golos, are you going to say that it's possible that Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina says that in the case of Shogeg Karban Amazed, you're Chayiv Golos? But Tanya, we don't have Brisa. Hanichnas lechanuse shal napach. Somebody went in to a blacksmith with his sparks flying around. V'notza nitzitzis, and a spark flew out from his work. V'tap chaloi alponav, and hit this visitor. Umeis, and the visitor died. Potter, it's Potter. Va'afilu nichnas pershus. So you see clearly this is pashtus, the case of Shogeg Karban Amazed. It's the same case as the carpenter. And here, the Brisa comes to a different conclusion. The Brisa says, yes. Even though it came from Potter from Golos, so that's like an oinus. Zok to Gemara, the cases are not parallel. Avada Shogeg Karban Amazed will be Chayiv Golos. In the case of the blacksmith, why is he not Chayiv Golos? It's talking about the apprentice. It's the apprentice of the blacksmith. In fact, what's the difference? Who it is? But because he's the apprentice, so his life is free now, and anybody can kill him, or at least the blacksmith can kill him. No, that's not quite the case. Because Rabbi Misarhav Bailotis, his boss said, "Get out! It's dangerous. Get out." The Eina Yosy, and he didn't go out. Frank the Gemara. But since he refused to go out, his boss is allowed to punish him by killing him. How could you sanction that? No, Kisavar Yotza. I told the apprentice to leave. I assumed he had left, so I assumed it was safe. I had no idea that he was there. So what does it make a difference if it's the apprentice or if it's a stranger? If he didn't have rishos, I told him to go out and he didn't go out, I should depart from Golos. Zok to Gemara, no. Acher les le'emes of the Rabbi. And a stranger, even though I told him to go out, we have to be concerned that maybe he didn't go out. Why do I have to be concerned that he didn't go out? He's not afraid of me. But my apprentice, I'm going to be potter. You know why? Because high isla emos of the Rabbi. When I told him to leave, I can assume he left. I don't have to be concerned that he stayed and he defied my word. And therefore, I'm potter from going into Golos because I'm an oinus gomer. I could have assumed for sure that he went into Golos. You know, there's a story with a guy who had 3 daughters and he had no money to marry them off. So he didn't know what to do. He would have loved to take a bentayra, but he can't support a bentayra. He's a very well. He has no money, so he didn't know what to do. So he went to the rabbi, and the rabbi said, "Let me see if I can suggest something for you. How about this Yankel? He's a good guy." So that he says, "Yankel, I don't know what to do with Yankel. He is a shoemaker. He's a shoemaker. He's a nice shidduch for your daughter." So are you crazy, shoemaker? What is going to happen if my daughter comes into her husband who's working on his shoes and she asks him for money? She's going to get all angry You see how hard I work day and night, and you want my money? And he's going to take a shoe that he's working on, he's going to throw it on her, and she's done. She's finished. So I can't marry her off to a shoemaker. So he says, okay, fine, I understand. So don't marry off to a shoemaker, marry off to a tailor. Whatever is he going to throw at her? He's going to throw a needle at her, he's going to throw a thread at her. What's the big deal? So once again, the father says, what are you talking about? Imagine he's in the middle of cutting a pattern, and she walks in and asks him for money. He's liable to pick up a scissors, throw it at her, and she'll get killed. I can't do that either. So the rabbi says, why don't you just marry your daughter after Ben Torah? What's going to be? He says, consider and learn, and she'll be as safe as can be. So the rabbi, so he tells the rabbi, what are you talking about? The rabbi, what if he's in the middle of learning the Gemara Bava Basra, and she walks into workshop. She walks in on him. That's why it came to my mind. And she says, "I need the money." He'll pick up the Gemara Bava Basra, and she could try to dodge this way. She could try to dodge that way. That Gemara Bava Basra is taking her out. I can't afford to do that. So the rabbi said, "Don't worry. According to the one, kan gemura nimmt nicht in hand." Did I just say that? Oh, I have a daughter on the market. It's being recorded? Okay, so talk more about it.
Assuming that he didn't see him, that he left.
That's right. He didn't know that he was there. I heard this from a batchen by a shefer brachas. Of a young man who was sitting in Koil. I actually didn't say it over properly. I'll tell it over to you after. It's the right way to say it. Zakt Gemara, Abzvid Mishmei the Rava Matilaha. Listen, I just hope that, sometimes when they read my daughter a shidduch, so they look me up to see who I am. I hope whoever looks me up doesn't look at this shtickle. Rab Zvid Mishmei the Rava Matilaha. It says, so Rab Zvid, in the name of Rabbi said, Rabbi Yosy ben Chanina wasn't talking about the first half of the brisa, and he wasn't talking about the second half of the brisa. When Rabbi Yosy ben Chanina said, you're part of him Golus, this is what he was talking about. It says umotza, meaning someone was chopping with an axe, his blade or a piece of wood goes flying, umotza, and it hits somebody and kills somebody. That's where someone is chayv to go to Golus. Prat lamamtzi esatzmoi. What if I'm chopping wood and my axe goes flying, and where it was going to land, now with the Iron Dome, the computer figures out from the projectile exactly where it's going to land. It was not going to hit anybody. And then after the projectile was already dislodged and it was in flight, someone stands exactly in the place. Someone moves and stands exactly in the place where this thing hits him and kills him. So at the time that the projectile was released, it would have done no damage at all. After the projectile was released, someone put himself into harm's way. If someone puts himself into that position after the projectile was released, there is no chiyuv golus at all. If I throw a stone and the computer figures out that it would not have hit anybody, and then but someone put his head out, and now he is in harm's way, potter, he will be potter. And on that, Amar Yosy ben Chanina, potter migolus. Of course, if that happens, he will be potter from golus. If the person got injured, even in such a case where the person's head got in the way after the projectile left my hand, I'm still chayiv the dalad dvarim. If you hold that in this case you're chayiv the dalad dvarim and potter megolus, kol shekina kamaisa. Surely on the earlier cases, as Rashi says, haniklas bechanusay shal nager the kivin the chazir the ayel. Since I know he came into my shop, it was incumbent on me to be careful. So I'm for sure chayiv b'dal dvarim in the case of the nager, whether he came in with rishus or without rishus, surely you'll be chayiv in dal dvarim. And the people who learn Rabbi Yosy ben Chanina's comments around the kamaisa, maybe avalahal pater lagamri, maybe in this case where when I shot whatever projectile I shot out, it was going to do nothing at all, and only after that someone put himself into harm's way, there's a less of a liability for me, and maybe that shita would hold, and even in this case, it will be potter from dalad dvarim. Okay. Zok to Gemara back. Tanu Rabban. Payalim shabo l'tvoya schar and balabayis. Payalim, workers of a person, come to collect their wages, and they go into his property, they knock on his front door, and they ask to be paid. In the meantime, they're in private property of the owner, the nachan shoyrei shel balabayis, and either the ox of the balabayis stoys them, or the noshchan kalba shel balabayis, or they got bitten by the dog of the balabayis. They're coming into his property just to ask for their pay, and they were bitten by a dog. Ubeis, and the employee dies, potter. The owner is potter from galus. Others say, they have the right to be there and to collect their money that's owed to them for pay. I guess so, but we'll have to see. He doesn't say, it's a little bit vague because the lashon is they're allowed to go. So does that mean he's chayiv? That means he's potter? I'm assuming that means he should be chayiv in galus. But
he's expected at any time, at any minute, at any day of the week.
I guess they're allowed to come. They have reshus to come knock on his door. But the Gemara is going to get into that. The Gemara is going to actually probe on under what circumstances is it allowed to approach him for money. Zogt Gemara, if it's normal that he's not on the, you don't find he doesn't come to the office. He's always at home. So that's where they have a right to go, because the only way they'll be able to collect their pay is if they go to him. So I'm sorry. That's right. Though he transferred those days. That's right. My timer, the Tanakama. Why did the Tanakama say that he's potter? They have a right to be there. So tomorrow, I skipped the line. If he's normally in the office, he's outside, he's out and about, where they can easily approach him for their pay when he's out and about. My time at Acher. Why would Acherim say they have a right to go to his house? They should access him when he's available. And if he's always at home and he's never outside, my time at the Tanakama, why would the Tanakama say that they didn't have a right to be there? Zokt Gemara loy tricha, the gaver de shchiach v'loy shchiach. Sometimes he's around, sometimes he's not around. Tosfos gives us a little more clarification. The shchiach v'loy shchiach, ishchiach, pshitale, the komaduchtech mashma. If he's around, then he means I'm going to pay you where you are. So now we're going to see exactly what happened when they came to his house. So Zok to Gemara as follows. It's a case of shchiach to lo shchiach. And therefore, the Karya Bava, they came knocking on this door. Right? They didn't trespass, they knocked on his door. And he responded in yes. So what does yes mean? Mar Savar in oil tomash. Since you're not always around, now you're at home, and you said yes when I knocked on the door, you meant to allow us permission to access your premises, to come to your front door to collect the money. Umar Sabar in means yes, I'll be right out. Stay where you are, I'm going to come to you, do not trespass. So basically, the machlokes is when someone says in under these circumstances, does he mean to give access to the person knocking on his door, and therefore they were in their bershus, or does it mean he's not giving them access and they were in their shalei bershus? So it narrowed its case down to a very, very specific case. So Duvi asks, can someone just go into someone's property to collect? He cannot. He knocked on the door, the homeowner said yes, and the question is, what does yes mean? And it's not like he didn't have a ring doorbell to release the latch. So the door it could be accessed if you have permission. Tanya, we looked in the Brisa, command Omar in Kuma Duchtochmash. We have a Brisa that seems to say that in means I'm going to come to you, stay where you are. The Tanya we learned, Poil shenichnas latvoyas charvi balabayis, a poil that came to collect from his boss, v'nachli shari shal balabayis, and the sheriff of the balabayis stoiced him. Einosh chikabo your dog bid him. Potter, the owner is potter from galus. Aval pisha nichnas bershus, even though he came in bershus. Frank Gemara, am I potter? Why would he be potter? Elalav. The case is the Karya Bava. He knocked on the door, in, and that's why we call it nichnas bershus. But it wasn't really bershus. Ushmamina in kuma duchtoch mashma. When someone says yes, he means yes, I'll be right out, not yes, come on in. Okay, gewaltig. Because he said yes, or I guess because he said yes. So, but yes doesn't necessarily mean rishus. Yes just means yes, I'll be there. It's a little schwer to lost because technically it's kuma duchtoch mashma. That's right. Zok Gemara. Shnei Shvar and Taman. Two oxen that were both a tam. So Reuben had a tam and Shimon had a tam. Shechavlu ze'eseh. They both damaged each other. So instead of me paying you Chatzi Nezek of your damage, and you pay me Chatzi Nezek of my damage, let's look. You damaged me 100, and I damaged you 100. Let's just call it a wash. But let's say you damaged me 100, and I damaged you 50. So then I owe. We take the difference, and I pay Chatzi Nezek, and I pay half of that. So then Shnei Shor and Tam Shechavlu Zeh Mishalman b'Moshe Chatzi Nezek. So I just want to do the calculation both ways. You damaged me 100, which means you owe me 50. I damaged you 50, which means I owe you 25, right? So if you owe me 50 and I owe you 25, all I really have to pay you is $25, right? Or you can look at it the other way. You damaged me 100, I damaged you 50. So the total damage is 50. Of that 50, I pay 25. So it doesn't make a difference how you do the calculation. Before or after, it works out to the same. I paid 50% of the difference in damages. Shnei mu'adim. What if both animals are mu'ad? So then mishalem b'moshe is aksholim. So once again, whatever the difference is, the person who did more damage pays the difference in full. What if it was echotam ve'echad mu'ad? Or if it's echotam ve'echad mu'ad, if mu'ad b'tam, if the mu'ad did more damage than the tam, mishalem b'moshe nezek sholim. So I will pay nezek sholim of what I damaged more than you did. And if it's tam b'mu'ad, if the tam did more damage on the mu'ad, mishalem b'moshe chatzi nezek. So let's do the calculation in this case. Okay, I'm a mu'ad, and I did $100 damage. You're a tam, and you did $50 damage, right? So technically, you would owe me 25, right? And I would owe you 100, right? Which means I pay you 75. So let's look at it the other way. You did 50, I did 100, right? So we take 50 from the 100, the 50 remains, and I pay you 50. So I'm paying you more. I'm paying you more. No, but if we look at what you owe me and what I owe you, I would pay you 75. Right? You owe me 25 for the Chatzi Nezek. I owe you 100 for the Nezek Sholim. So I would only pay you 75. But you don't look at it that way. First, you subtract the damages. So I get a better deal. Because I damaged 100, you damaged 50. So we look at the total damage as 50, and I only have to pay 50. So I'm getting a better deal. I'm not sure why. It bothered me why it's like it, but that's how the Mishnah prescribes it. That I get the credit, the full damages that you did to me from what I owe you, and that I pay Nezek Sholim. Why don't we say you only owe me 25? I owe you 100, I pay you 75. You don't say that.
Maybe that's what it means.
Well, I'm not sure. So the truth is, I'm not sure. So let's look at this again. Tam b'mu'ad mishalem b'moiser chatzi nezek. I'm not sure. Same thing would be if two people punched each other. But if it was Adam b'mu'ad, what if I had got into a fight with your ox and I caused damage on your ox? But if it was Adam b'tam b'Adam, Adam b'tam, if I damaged you, tam more, mishalem b'moshe nezek sholim. Tam b'Adam, mishalem b'moshe chatzi nezek. Oh, the archcopy is not a machlekes? It's a machlekes who and who? Our choice was over here? Right.
One way and the other way.
I was learning according to Rashi. So Rashi refers, Shamin Mahazikai, Shalzeh Yoshal Nazakov Shalzeh. You look at the damages, not on the owing. So Tosfos says for Karen. I glanced through Tosfos, but I guess I wasn't medayik well enough because I was struggling with this shiloh. So it is a machlek. Okay. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Av Tam Shechavo Ba'Adam, even if it's a Tam Shechavo Ba'Adam, Mishalem B'Moiser Nezek Shalim. But Tam damages a person, the Tam pays Nezek Shalim. So that's going to be a new halacha of a Tam damaging a person will have different halachas than a Tam doing monetary damages. And we'll see that in the Gemara. Tana Rabbanan. It says in the pasuk, "K'mishvur hazeh yasaloi." Where does the pasuk say this? By a shore that kills someone. Oy ben yigach, oy bas yigach. So this sounds like a damage, not like a death. K'mishvur hazeh yasaloi. And what is this k'mishvur hazeh? What is the immediate psukim preceding this pasuk? The Torah discusses Asher Tam that does damage pays Chatzi Nezek, Asher Mu that damages pays Nezek Shalom, and then the pasuk goes on and says, so what does it mean, yasaloi? Tanu Rabbanan, kamishra zeh yasaloi, kamishpat shar b'shar. You treat a shar that damaged a person the same as a shar that damaged a shar. Kamishpat shar b'shar, kach mishpat shar ba'adam. Ma shar b'shar, tam shalom chati nezek, and mud nezek shalom, av shar ba'adam, tam shalom chati nezek, umud nezek shalom. That is the sheet of the Tanakam. But Rabbi Kiva says, kamishpat hazeh, meaning like the very last halacha discussed. What was the very last halacha discussed before the Torah was discussing a shor damaging a person? The very last halacha discussed was a shor hamuad that's toist. So ketachton v'loy kelyon, when a shor damages a person, it's always treated like a shor hamuad no matter what. In other words, that you pay nezek sholem. But there's another feature of the payment that's made by a owner of a shor, and that is min ha'aliyah, right? If your animal is a muad, it pays min ha'aliyah, and if your animal is a tam, it only pays migufay. So, being that we're comparing a shor tam that damages a person to the payment of a shor muad, and therefore it pays nezek shalom even the first time, yachal mashalim and aliyah, you might think that if the damages was greater than the value of the ox, the owner would have to pay the damages in full. So even though when a shor damages a person, the owner of the shor has to pay nezek shalom, he doesn't have to pay more than the value of his ox. According to the Rabbanon, what does he learn out of the kamishpat hazeh? Although an ox who damages a person is mechayiv the owner to pay, that's just a nezek. But he doesn't have to pay tzar ripoy sheves and boishes. Rabbi Kiva lepoitu ma'abad var minoli. How does Rabbi Kiva know that on my ox choices I don't have to pay dal dvar? Nafkalei, from the pasuk itself that talks about paying dal dvar. It says ish kiyitin mum ba misai, and we darshan ish ba misai v'loy shar ba misai. So minei obey, the pasuk is telling us that these halachas of chamisha dvarim do not apply to if your ox damages. In fact, the Gemara for Rabbanon, the Rabbanon themselves. If we only had ish b'misai v'loy shar b'misai, I would have known that it excludes an ox from damaging from some of the payments, but not from all. I would have thought tsar I don't pay for if my animal damages, and that's what it means. Ish b'misai v'loy shar b'misai. Ish pays everything. Shar doesn't. Why? Because shar only deletes tsar. Avol ripoy v'shebes. I would have thought I would have to pay anyway. You don't pay the aldvar. So you're going to ask me, why would I think that you pay all those without tsar? So Rashi, because all those cost me money. The victim has to pay money to a doctor. The victim has to take off of work. That's actually costing him money. Tsar doesn't cost him money. It's just paying him for his pain. That's not a direct damage. So there, I would have thought that a shar doesn't have to pay. Kamash Malon. So Tzara would have known you don't pay, but maybe Rifa you do pay. Kamash Malon Hazeh, you only pay Nezeh. Shor Shava Mana, Shanagach Shor Shava Masai. A shor that was only worth a mana, so let's say $100, stoys the shor that was worth $200. The Eina Nevela Yafa Klum. And the Nevela of the Shor Shava Masayim is worth zero. So there's full damages, so $100 is owing. That's the Chatzin Nezeh. Noitel a shor. So the owner, the victim, the owner of the ox that was 200 that's now dead and useless can just seize the shor. Why? Because the shor is liable to pay me. The shor is worth 100. I just seize the shor.
Not a choice.
A choice of what?
Cash or the.
Oh, so that's precisely what our discussion is going to be. Masnizin mani Rabbi Kiva. The Mishnah is consistent with Rabbi Kiva. The Tanya. Yusham hashar bebesin divrei Rabbi Shmuel. You don't give him the shor. You assess the value of the shor. That's the limit of the liability of the owner of the tam, and that's how much cash he collects. Rabbi Kiva Omer huchlat shor. He just goes and seizes the actual shor. But my kamifli, what is the machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel? Whether he just seizes the shor or he just collects cash, the value of the shor. Rabbi Shmuel savar balchayv. Rabbi Shmuel treats him like a balchayv. The victim of this damage is like a malva. By a malva, v'zuzi hu demasikle. A malva is owed money. He doesn't own any specific nechasim, so therefore he collects money from the mazik. Rabbi Kiva is over shutfininu. We become shutfim. We become shutfim in your ox the moment your ox damages my ox. Where would you see such a halacha that the nizik becomes a shutif? The kamufli behaikra. They're arguing in understanding of the following pasuk. By a short time that does damage, the Torah says umachru es ashar the mazik shor, the shor that's alive, is sold. V'chotzku es kasboy, and they split the money. Rabbi Shmuel Savar, what that means? Who's supposed to sell it? Levedina kamizarachmana. The Torah is instructing Bezdin, since we're limiting the liability to the value of the shor hamazik, you Bezdin sell the shor hamazik, so we have the funds with which to pay the nizik. Rabbi Kiva Savar, lenizik umazik umazik l'hurachmana. The Torah is not talking to the Bezdin. The Torah is talking to the actual nizik umazik. Sell it together because you're shutvim in this ox, and that's why we have a machlokes as to whether or not I'm a shutif or not. If you hold that the Torah is talking to Bezdin, I'm not a shutif. But if you hold the Torah is talking to the mazik and the nizik, then I'm a shutif. My beinayu. So what's halacha l'maisa? So what's the nafkamina? Regardless of money is owing, the nafkamina is higdishu nizik ike beinayu. What if right after this happened, the nizik was makdishit? If you hold like Rabbi Kiva that he's a shutif, well, if he's makdishit, I'm an owner. I could be makdish. But if you hold that I just have a shibud, but of course he owes me money, I don't own the ox, then it wouldn't be good. As Rashi says, Rabbi Shmuel loy kaddish lay. According to Rabbi Shmuel, it wouldn't be kaddish. Rabbi Kiva kaddish. So boy, we know Rava Rav Nachman. Rava asked the child of Rav Nachman, what happened if machrei mazik? What if the mazik sold it? Rabbi Shmuel, where he has no ownership in my parah, he couldn't be makdish it. Would that be a good sale? Kivan dam Rabbi Shmuel bal chayvu v'zuzi hu demasik lei machur. Since Rabbi Shmuel said, "Now I'm a bal chayvu, I owe you money, but you have no specific interest in my animal, and therefore, if I sell my animal, the sale is valid." Oidema. On the other hand, Kivan the mishabed le nizik, since the mishabed le nizik, since this animal is mishubed to the nizik, what do you mean it's mishubed to the nizik? Zok Rashi the loyav le dami. If the mazik would refuse to pay, shakalei l'shar, he does have a right to seize the shar. It's like a mashkin. The rechmana shivdei nahalei. From the fact that the Torah tells the bezdin even to sell it, vice the there is a shibud on this shar to the nizik. So maybe lav kol kiminei, he has no right to sell it because this shar is lean. Amarlei, so he answered. I'm sorry. Yeah, but maybe there's a lien on himself. Okay, very good. So that's a very important kasha. So what you're asking about the kasha? Where do you ever find that the metaltlin of a b'chayv meshubed karka is? Right. So the Gemara is going to discuss this. Zok the Gemara Amar Leish Rab Nachman answered Rava Einay Macher. The sale is not good. Frek the Gemara. Frek Rava and Rab Nachman Vatanya Machrei Macher. How could you Rab Nachman say that it's not sold? The Brisa says it is sold. So Vatanya Machrei Macher Amalei. So Rab Nachman answered back Chayzer v'gaveyu Nizak milakeach. Yes, it might be a good sale, but the Nizak has a right to seize it from the lakeach like a piece of property that was meshubah that was sold. Frankly, where do you ever find that a metaltlin, like a shor, the lakeach can seize, the malva can seize from the lakeach? If you're telling me, Rab Nachman, the pshat in the price of machri mocher means that I can still go seize it from the lakeach, so lama mocher. So exactly what was it sold? It's not sold. I can take it away. What does liridaya mean? What if the lakeach used this ox before I seized it? Whose ox did he use? Did he use the mazik's ox? And I have no claim on him. I just can take the ox itself. But if he used my ox, then I could charge him rental because you were using my ox. So macher, that when the nizik seizes the ox from the lakeach doesn't owe the nizik money for having used the ox up until this point. Shemamina. Frankly, more, are you telling me, which is exactly Mati's kasha? Shemami no, lava, umoicher, metaltlin, bezin, goyven lamehem? Are you telling me that a regular lava that sells metaltlin, the bezin will seize the metaltlin sold from the third party, from the purchaser, to give it to the malva? We've never heard of such a thing ever. Zaktumar, shiny house. The reason why they seize an ox is by an ox, it's not just a standard lien due to a loan. It's the chamanda asu apoitikidami. The lien on this ox is much, much greater than just a regular lien on all my nechasim because I owe him money. Rather, the Torah, Rashi says, Rachamana Shave Lemikveh Mahashar. The Torah designated this shor is the shor that's going to be collected from. Correct the Gemara, it still shouldn't work because the Amar Rava said, also Avdoi Apoitiki, what if a regular loiva designated one of his avodim, you're going to be that Apoitiki, Umachroi, and he sold the Evid, Umachroi Bachoiv, Goiva Himenu. The Bachoiv will go to the Lakech and seize the Evid away from the Lakech. So there you could designate an Apoitiki. But Shari Apoitiki, if you owe money and you make your Shari, even though you made it into an Apoitiki, which is the same level of lien that the Torah puts on this ox, but if the loiva sells it, ein balchoiv goiva himenu. The balchoiv can't collect. So even if you want to say that the Torah makes this ox of the mazik into an apoitiki, the Brisa says, Rava said that when you sell an ox, even though it's very specifically leaned, the balchoiv still can't collect it. Zoktim eved my timer. Why can the balchoiv collect the eved? Because it's not prejudicing the buyer, because the buyer could have protected himself. How could the buyer protect himself? Mishum de isle kala. Whenever an eved becomes an apoitiki, it becomes known. People talk about it. And therefore, there was a buyer beware. When I bought the eved, I could have done my due diligence and been made aware that there's this problem. So when I bought it, we assume you accepted that risk, that it is possible that a creditor will come and take it away from you. Now, normally, an ox doesn't have such a coil, and therefore, we will not allow a bachoiv to seize an ox, because then people could never sell oxes, because they never know if it might be lean. But an ox that stoist, that already has a coil. Once a shor stoist, now there's a coil about it. Everyone knows that this ox is lean. It has the same status as the apoitiki of a nevet. The tur nachana korile. And therefore, there was a buyer beware, and therefore you could seize it from the lekeach, and we don't say how was he supposed to know. There would have been a coil he would have known, and it's no different than an eved who's made an apoitiki. So Allah l'maisa macher, but they will seize it away from him. But the malva doesn't have a right to take money from the lekeach for the use of the shore until he seized it. Tani Rav Tachlifa by my Rabba Kamei Rabavo. Machrei ein macher. If you sold it, it's not sold. And Rashi tells us at this point, it's not sold at all, meaning I can go back and collect from the lakeach rent for the use of the animal until I came to collect it. But if the mazik was makdish the animal, it will become kaddish. Zakt Gemara machrei man. Who are we talking about? The person that sold it. Ilema mazik, if we're suggesting that the mazik sold it, machrei ein macher. If it's sold, if he tried selling it, it won't be sold. That was the Brisa said. So who would this be going according to? Rabbi Kiva, the Amar Huchlat Ashar, right? According to Rabbi Shmuel, why would you say machrei ein macher? The owner, the mazik still owns the shor. If you're going to suggest that the sale doesn't work, it's talking about somebody who couldn't have sold it, tried selling it. The only person you can say that if it's macher ein macher would be the mazik. If you want to say that the mazik didn't have a right to sell it, it has to be Rebbe Kiva, because it's only Rebbe Kiva who holds that the mazik didn't have a right to sell it, because it already belongs to the nizik. So now let's look vekdishe muktish. Why would it be mehektish? The same way I can't sell it as if I have the mazik, I can't sell it because the nizik already owns this ox. So how can I make it hektish? We're also on the Rabbi Shmuel. That you're going to have to say is going according to Rabbi Shmuel. Damar Yushar Ashar best. That doesn't make sense, right? It's one halacha. This ox, if it's sold, it's not a sale. If it's mukdash, it is hektish. You can't say it's half and half here. Ella, what are we going to have to say? Nizik machar. Let's say the nizik was sold it. So machar ain't a machar. Who would hold it? Wouldn't be sold. Mani Rabbi Shmuel. That would have to go according to Rabbi Shmuel, because according to Rabbi Kiva, that belongs to the nizik. The nizik could sell it. Hekdeshe Muktish would be Asan Rebbe Kiva, because Rebbe Kiva holds that the Nizik does own it. Fighter, that's not a good shot. So we need to find a way to understand this brisa where it should be either consistent fully with Rabbi Shmuel or consistent fully with Rabbi Kiva. Let's say it was the mazik who sold it. Everybody holds it's not a good sale. Why, according to Rabbi Shmuel, isn't it a good sale? We say that the mazik still owns the ox. There's just a lien on it. Zok to Gemara, afilu Rabbi Shmuel, do meshabdu nizik. Since it's meshubah to the nizik, we'll say that it's not a good sale. Now we're going to have to change from what we said. Now we're going to say it's not a good sale, meaning that the nizik can go take it away from the lakeach. But Liridaya, he wouldn't be able to collect rent for the use of it up until now, because I'm only seizing it now, right? Really, the mazik owns it. And the mazik sale technically is a good sale. I could seize it from the lakeach because it's meshubit. But when I'm seizing it, that's when I'm taking ownership of it. But the sale was a good sale, and the use of the animal by the lakeach up until the point that the nizik seized it was legitimate use, and he does not pay the nizik any money. So that's why mocher in the mocher. Hiktisha muktish will be afilu Rabbi Kiva, even according to Rabbi Kiva, who holds that the nizik owns the animal. Why is it that if the mazik sold it, it's a good hektish? It doesn't really mean that it's a good hektish. Really, technically, it's not a good hektish. So what does the brisa mean? Hiktisha muktish. It's because we just force him to be poided from hektish, even though technically he can just go. The nizik can just walk to hektish and take it, because the nizik never had a right to be makdishit. We make the nizik pay a little bit. Why? Imagine the nizik walks into the gizbar, takes the animal and walks out and doesn't pay. People are going, hey, I didn't know that you could just take hektish without being paid. Bezin's letting him, the gizbar's letting him, because people will think it's hektish. So therefore, you force him to pay a little bit.
You can say that Shubal of the Nizik was like Marsa before.
The Torah makes them to the Poitik, indeed.
Because otherwise it's not Meshubah, right?
Correct.
And we said that on Poitik he has a call.
Correct.
Why would we think that you could be Makdish? You know that the reason why you could be Makdish is because it was other elements.
It is a call that it's Meshubad, but that doesn't mean that the mazik can't be makdish. The mazik still owns it, so he still has a right to be makdish. So so according to Rabbi Shmuel, it makes perfect sense. It's hektish. It's taka hektish. It's real hektish because the nizik had a right to be makdish. The question is, according to Rabbi Kiva, that it belongs to the mazik, the nizik had no right to be makdish. So why is there any payment due at all to hektish? Teretz is because of exera. If he just walks in and takes it, it will look like you can just walk in and take things of hektish without being paid. The nizik was the mazik, correct. The mazik was makdish. And according to Rabbi Kiva, it's not hektish at all, because the animal fully belongs to the nizik. So why do we have to pay if we want to take it from hektish? Because it looks like hektish. So let's see Rashi Rabavo. I'm sorry, before Rabavo. Hiktesh muktish, lav kadosh mamish. According to Rabbi Kiva, it's not really hektish, because the animal belongs to the nizik. It doesn't belong to the mazik. So the mazik could never have been makdish. When the nizik goes to claim it from hektish as his, he should give a little bit. What if he was makdish his nechasov? But he owed that money. The yoyev lahektish midi porta. The bachayv who's seizing the money from hektish should give hektish a couple of pennies. The bachayv delay. Why do you have to give a little bit? Hektish gomer yoytzel lechulen v'lepid. Givaldik, ton about it. Short time shehizik, a short time that did damage. There was no amad bedin, so there was no psak from Bezdin that this ox owes me money. So the halach is mochrei mocher. If the mazik sold the animal, it sold hekdeshe muktish. If he was maktish, it'll be hektish. What if shachtoi, the mazik shechted this animal, but nasne b'matana, or he gave the animal away to somebody else? Masha asa. What he did is good. That's all. If this happened before Bezdin Pascha. Mishamad bedin, but once they were already in din, then macher eni macher. There, if he sold it, his mechira won't be good. Hekdesha eni mukdash, his hekdesh is not good. Shachta, if he shechted it, now the animal's not here anymore, or v'nasna b'matana, or he gave it away, l'yasav l'klum, meaning the nizik can seize it away. What happens if kadmai balei chayvais vigbiu? What if this mazik also owed money, and the bachayv came and seized this ox to collect on their debt? Bein chavat shelo hizik. Say if I owe the money even before my animal did damage, so there was already a lien on my animal. Bein hizik at shelo chav. Even if I borrowed money after the damage, before we went to Bezdin, regardless, also they have no right to take that, and the nizik can seize the animal away from them, because the payment that the nizik takes from the damage caused to the animal is from the goof of the animal. That's where he's supposed to collect from. Mu'at shehizik. Now, this is a very difficult price to understand. The Gemara is going to break it down clause by clause. But first, we're taking a huge bite, and then we're going to have to chew it little by little. What if it was a mood that did damage? It doesn't matter. Because you're not paying migufay. It's minahaliya. There's a separate cheshbon between the mazik and the nizik, but the animal has nothing to do with this. There's no payment that's tied to the animal. The payment is independent of the animal. Should we stop here or should we push? Because it's late already. Okay, so we'll stop here. Shkoyach. Akiva worked very hard to make everything.